Why do intelligent people join cults? It seems impossible at first. Intelligence, after all, should be a shield, a light against deception. We imagine that the well-educated, the analytical, the rational would be the least likely to surrender their minds to a manipulative movement. And yet, history tells us otherwise. From scientists and doctors to philosophers and engineers, some of the brightest minds of their generations have devoted themselves to destructive ideologies and authoritarian groups. The truth is not simple. Cult psychology is not a story of ignorance, but of humanity. It is a story of how our deepest needs for meaning, belonging, certainty, and purpose can override intellect. It is a story of how brilliant minds can build cages of logic around their own enslavement, how knowledge can serve belief, and how charisma can rewrite reality. To understand why intelligent people join dangerous movements, we must begin not with madness, but with longing. Every cult, every movement, every system of control begins as a promise to heal what is missing in the human heart. A cult rarely begins as evil. Most start as communities of seekers, small groups of people searching for purpose in an uncertain world. The world itself provides fertile soil. In times of social upheaval, loneliness, economic despair, or political chaos, the human heart grows hungry for certainty. Out of that hunger, charismatic leaders rise. These leaders do not declare themselves tyrants. They speak in the language of salvation, of awakening, truth, revolution, or healing. They promise transformation, purity, and understanding. The intelligent listener is not immune. They are drawn precisely because these ideas are framed as intellectual revolutions, as higher knowledge. The cult begins with a question: what if the world is asleep and we are the ones awake? For a person seeking meaning, this question burns with irresistible light. It is easy to mock those who fall into cults as naive or foolish. But reality defies that stereotype. Many recruits are articulate, educated, and thoughtful. They are not duped overnight. They are persuaded step by step. The manipulation is subtle, a slow weaving of emotion and ideology. Intelligence can even make the process smoother. A highly educated mind seeks coherence. When presented with contradictions, it constructs justifications. A brilliant mathematician once joined a spiritual movement that believed the universe could be explained through sacred geometry. He was not tricked by stupidity. He was seduced by beauty, by the dream that truth could be both spiritual and mathematical. His intellect became the very tool that bound him. Cults do not conquer intelligence. They recruit it. They transform it into a weapon of self-persuasion. Every cult follows a similar psychological structure. It begins with love bombing, overwhelming acceptance, and affirmation. The new recruit is told that they are special, chosen, finally understood. The effect is intoxicating. After all, even the most rational person carries wounds of loneliness and misunderstanding. Once trust is built, isolation begins. The group becomes the new family. Old friends are seen as distractions, skeptics as enemies, outsiders as asleep. The walls close slowly, so slowly that the recruit doesn't feel trapped until escape feels impossible. Next comes control of information. Alternative perspectives are labeled lies. Critical thinking is reframed as negativity. The leader becomes the arbiter of truth. The member learns to doubt their own judgment, relying instead on the group's narrative. Finally, identity fusion occurs. The individual self dissolves into the collective. The recruit no longer says, "I believe," but "we believe." The line between personal thought and group doctrine disappears. This is not brainwashing in the cartoonish sense of hypnosis or drugs. It is social conditioning, the same psychological forces that bind soldiers, corporations, or nations pushed to an extreme. Human beings cannot survive without meaning. Intelligence intensifies this need. The more aware a person becomes of life's complexity and uncertainty, the stronger the hunger for structure and significance. Cults offer meaning in its purest, most concentrated form. They tell their members that the chaos of the world has a secret order, that they alone understand the pattern, that their lives serve a cosmic purpose. Consider a physicist who joins a group preaching the harmony between consciousness and quantum theory. To her, it feels like a unification of science and spirit, a completion of her intellectual journey. Or the political activist who joins a radical movement promising justice, believing that through absolute devotion, he can finally redeem humanity's failures. In both cases, intelligence is not a defense, but a compass. And when that compass points toward false north, it leads the seeker deeper into illusion. At the heart of every cult stands a leader, a figure who embodies certainty. Charismatic leaders are masters of psychological projection. They mirror the hopes and fears of their followers, becoming whatever the audience needs them to be: healer, prophet, teacher, savior. What makes charisma powerful is not magic, but emotional intelligence. The leader reads people's insecurities and reflects back a vision of perfection. For the intelligent follower, the leader often poses as an equal, a philosopher, a mentor, a revolutionary thinker. The relationship feels intellectual, even noble. But gradually the dynamic shifts. The leader becomes the source of truth, the axis of morality. The follower begins to measure their worth by proximity to that authority. The mind that once questioned everything now questions nothing that comes from the leader's lips. Charisma is the alchemy that turns reason into reverence. Smart people often suffer from a hidden vulnerability, the fear of uncertainty. Intelligence illuminates the vastness of ignorance. It exposes how little anyone truly knows. For some, that realization becomes unbearable. Cults exploit this discomfort by offering absolute answers. There are no ambiguities, no shades of gray, only right and wrong, pure and impure, enlightened and asleep. The promise of total certainty feels like psychological relief. One former member of a doomsday sect once said, "I didn't join because I was weak. I joined because I was tired of being confused." His education had given him questions, but no peace. The cult gave him both clarity and belonging, even if that clarity was a lie. In this way, intelligence becomes the gateway to despair, and despair opens the door to certainty. Once inside a cult, the mind performs an extraordinary act. It reprograms itself to maintain coherence. Intelligent people are especially adept at this. They invent intricate justifications for contradictions, turning paradox into philosophy. If a prophecy fails, they claim it was metaphorical. If a leader lies, they call it a test of faith. If a rule feels wrong, they decide it must be misunderstood. The cognitive dissonance that should trigger doubt instead triggers creativity. One software engineer who joined a technological utopian movement spent years building algorithms for a digital consciousness project. When the project collapsed, he insisted that failure was part of a higher plan. His logic was flawless within the world he'd constructed. The human brain does not seek truth, it seeks coherence. When coherence is defined by a cult, intelligence becomes its loyal servant. When individuals join tightly knit groups, something strange happens. A collective mind forms one that feels wiser, purer, more powerful than any individual member. Psychologists call this groupthink, and it operates on emotion more than reason. In a cult, groupthink magnifies certainty. Dissent is labeled betrayal. Agreement becomes virtue. The more unified the group appears, the more right it feels. Members experience euphoria in synchronization, chanting together, praying together, obeying together. For the intelligent, this unity offers profound relief. It dissolves the loneliness of individual thought. No longer must they wrestle with isolation or doubt. They are part of something greater, something eternal. But unity without individuality is slavery wearing the mask of harmony. Consider the case of the Sullivanians, a cult that grew from a group of psychotherapists in New York City. It began with progressive ideals, the liberation of love, and the deconstruction of family. Most members were artists, doctors, and intellectuals. Over time, the group turned authoritarian, isolating members and controlling their private lives. The story demonstrates a key insight. Intelligence seeks innovation. Movements that promise to transcend traditional morality or thought attract creative minds. The tragedy comes when the search for freedom becomes another form of imprisonment. History repeats this pattern. Bright individuals joining revolutionary ideologies, convinced they are creating utopia, only to discover too late that utopia demands obedience. The smarter the person, the more eloquently they can defend their own chains. Control in a cult is rarely enforced through violence. It is maintained through psychological mechanisms: guilt, fear, dependency, and reward. Members are made to confess personal secrets, creating emotional vulnerability. Doubt is framed as sin. Leaving the group is equated with spiritual death or social exile. Meanwhile, moments of approval and community affection reinforce loyalty. It is a system of conditioning indistinguishable from addiction. The brain's reward pathways learn to associate obedience with pleasure and dissent with pain. An intelligent member does not realize they are being conditioned. They believe they are making conscious choices. They defend the system passionately because their self-worth is now fused with it. The brilliance that once illuminated truth now powers the machinery of control. At a certain point, a cult's ideology ceases to be an idea. It becomes identity. To question it feels like questioning existence itself. The line between thought and faith dissolves. One might think that a rational mind would revolt at this stage, but often it does not. The intellect, instead of rebelling, submits. It begins to protect the belief the way the immune system protects the body, attacking any intrusion of doubt. The most intelligent cult members become the most eloquent defenders. They write books, lead seminars, debate critics. They are sincere, articulate, persuasive. To them, outsiders appear blind. They have not lost their minds. They have redefined reason. In this way, the cult transforms intelligence into evangelism. Yet even in the most controlled environment, doubt eventually seeps in. A contradiction too large to ignore, a punishment too cruel to justify, a moment of betrayal by the leader. Something breaks the spell. For intelligent members, this awakening can be devastating. The same mind that once built arguments in defense of the group now turns those arguments inward, dissecting the deception and feeling profound shame. One former member of a political cult described it this way: "I didn't just lose my beliefs, I lost the person I thought I was." My intelligence became my accuser. Leaving a cult is not simply walking away. It is dismantling an internal architecture built over years, one that gave meaning, structure, and love. The process can take years, even decades. To leave a cult is to undergo a psychological death. The person who walks out is not the same as the one who joined. They must face not only the loss of community, but also the loss of identity. Many experience withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, insomnia, guilt, and isolation. They question their judgment, their worth, their sanity. The outside world, which once seemed wrong, now feels alien. Recovery requires compassion, not condemnation. Intelligent ex-members often punish themselves harder than anyone else. They replay every argument, every decision, searching for the moment they should have known. But understanding cult psychology means understanding that no one is immune. The same forces that bind a cult also bind nations, corporations, and social movements. The difference is only degree. What do we learn from this? First, intelligence is not immunity. The mind, no matter how sharp, is guided by emotion. When emotion hungers for belonging, meaning, and certainty, intellect follows. Second, cult psychology is not confined to remote communes. It exists in the workplace that demands total loyalty, in the ideology that forbids dissent, in the influencer who claims exclusive truth. Third, the cure is not cynicism, but awareness. Critical thinking is more than logic. It is emotional humility, the willingness to admit that anyone can be fooled, including ourselves. Finally, the path out of manipulation begins where all genuine wisdom begins, with doubt. Doubt is not weakness. It is the mind's immune response to certainty. Today, cults no longer need compounds or temples. The internet has replaced the commune. Digital communities can replicate every mechanism of control: love bombing, isolation, dogma, charismatic leadership, all through screens. Smart, tech-savvy individuals join online movements that promise truth hidden from the mainstream, tribes that label outsiders as sheep, and influencers who demand faith disguised as critical thinking. The architecture is the same: emotional vulnerability, social reinforcement, ideological purity. The only difference is speed. A process that once took months can now occur in days. The modern cult wears hashtags instead of robes, but the psychology remains ancient. To resist the pull of cultic thinking, one must perform a simple test: the mirror test. Ask yourself, can I disagree with my group and still belong? If the answer is no, you are no longer in a community, you are in a cage. Healthy belief systems tolerate doubt. They evolve through questioning. But cults, political or spiritual, fear inquiry. They call it betrayal. Intelligent people often fail this test because they assume that their reasoning proves their freedom. But the more passionately we defend our worldview, the more we must ask who built it and why. The mirror test is not just for cult members. It is for all of us. After leaving a cult, recovery is not about erasing the past, but understanding it. The ex-member must reconstruct identity from fragments. They must rediscover what thoughts, values, and feelings truly belong to them. Intelligent survivors often become powerful teachers, using their insight to help others recognize manipulation. They turn pain into clarity, illusion into wisdom. The process is long and painful, but it proves a profound truth. The same intelligence that once bound them can also free them, once it learns to serve the self rather than the system. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation is that cult psychology is not an anomaly. It is built from the same instincts that shape all human society: our need for belonging, our trust in leaders, our craving for order. Religions, corporations, political parties all use rituals, symbols, and share narratives. Most remain healthy because they allow autonomy and dialogue. But the line between faith and fanaticism is thin, and intelligence alone cannot see it. The potential for cult behavior lives in everyone. What saves us is not brilliance, but balance. The capacity to love without worship, to believe without surrender, to follow without blindness. Why do intelligent people join dangerous movements? Because intelligence is not the opposite of vulnerability. It is a force amplifier. It strengthens whatever emotion drives it. If the emotion is curiosity, it births discovery. If it is loneliness, it births dependence. If it is fear, it births obedience. Cults understand this perfectly. They do not fight the mind. They seduce it. They promise truth to the thinker, family to the lonely, and certainty to the confused. The lesson, then, is timeless. Guard not only your mind, but your longing. The most dangerous illusions are not those imposed upon us, but those we willingly embrace because they make the world seem simple, noble, and whole. The intelligent person's true task is not to outthink deception, but to outfeel it, to remain human in the face of ideologies that demand perfection. Because intelligence without humility is the easiest mind to capture. And freedom, in the end, is not the absence of belief. It is the courage to doubt what we most want to believe.